everyone. It's Bill Phillips of the Prince George Daily News. We're here with our political panel on all things Prince George. I have with us today Tracy Calogheros of the Exploration Place, Todd Corrigall of the Chamber of Commerce, and Mackenzie Kerr. And we're going to talk about the big issue that's been going on in Prince George this past week, or the big news, I guess, is BC Hemp has unveiled a rather large, ambitious suite of projects for the area, about $15 billion, and could be up to 15,000 jobs. Let's go to Mackenzie first. You're pretty excited about this announcement. So what do you think? Is this plausible, or is it pie in the sky?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I think that diversifying our economy is exactly the direction that we need to go, and supporting projects like this. I've had lots of meetings with BC Hemp, including one yesterday, to talk about the details and everything. And yeah, I'm super excited about this project. I think that we need to have big goals, and they've priced it out, and the numbers that they're giving you are, numbers coming straight from their books. So even if it does seem a little bit high, I think it's still going to be very close. So especially the numbers for the jobs, they're very specific about how many they look at how many people will need for each project. So it was exciting to watch their live the other night. They announced a processing plant, an extraction site, local farmers involved in where they'll be planting it, a pharmacy. So it's very exciting to see that there's so many different branches off of this one project that we can do to really help diversify our economy up here and get away from the boom and bust cycle. I think forestry obviously is very important to me. That's what I'm studying. So in no way will it be replacing that. I've been bringing up issues to make sure that agriculture land is not taken over by hemp, because that's an issue that I've been seeing coming up too. And they're definitely making sure that they're working with farmers to make sure that there's no, we're not going to plant hemp in the entire interior and cut off all of our agriculture and forestry. They're going to make sure that it's done right. So I'm really happy to hear about this plan, and yeah, excited to be promoting it and talking about it every chance I can, involving everyone possible.
Right on. Todd, from a Chamber of Commerce perspective or a business perspective, this is big news, big dollars, big money. How big is it, and how feasible is it? I guess that's a lot of money to raise.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to engage directly with BC Hemp yet on some of the numbers and the tactical data surrounding that. But when you look at projects of this size and of this magnitude, there's certainly a lot of economic spin-offs that will come from that, whether that be through construction workers on site to help with any of that, whether that be through farmers, temporary foreign workers that are coming in to help with cultivation. There's tons of spin-off economic factors that play into this. What our hope is from this is we lost a polyethylene plant in the city, which then cuts into the tax base. And to Mackenzie's point about looking at that economic diversification, there's a great opportunity here to not only diversify and strengthen the Prince George economy. We are one of the largest cities outside of the Lower Mainland, so we're poised for some strategic growth here. But we are adding to the tax base, which hope will then remedially take the impact off some of the other business owners and landowners in our community. So the long-term gains through this process can be huge. I think, I want to go back a year, just over a year ago, at the BC Natural Resources Forum, and speaking with another group involved in the hemp industry, and them talking about how some of the retooling pieces that were going out there for industrial equipment, for agricultural equipment, that people had to put in place because the strength of the hemp fiber is so strong that it was destroying some of the John Deere equipment, and they had to go out and recreate some of the pieces on there. So there's all these remedial retooling pieces that come along with it. And as we sort of navigate COVID-19 and look at our industrial base here in Prince George, I suspect that there's several businesses here that could play a significant role in that process too.
Absolutely. Tracy, your thoughts on the hemp proposal is, like I say, it's certainly a big project. What's your view on this? And is hemp as good as it sounds, I guess?
Yeah, I have been behind hemp for most of my life. I mean, I remember when Mackenzie and I were doing one of our discussions, I joked that I have a hemp shirt that's older than Mackenzie is probably. That fiber lasts. It's strong. It has so many applications. And, you know, I was behind the Olefins project too, heading the science. The diversification's great. The jobs are great. I like the work that's going on. I still want to see the science. There are some elements of what this hemp plant is proposing that could, in theory, still impact an airshed down the road. But the actual initial announcement is great, and I'm all for it. I don't see a downside. I really don't. I think hemp is one of those fibers that will allow us to take the expertise we've developed over hundreds of years up here and apply it to a technology in a new way that's going to work in the next generations.
Yeah, air quality is certainly one of the issues. The CEO said that it will be better than the petrochemical plant, and they're looking to be carbon neutral. It's with the bioethanol plant for where the West Coast Olefins is. So I'm not sure. We'll go to Mackenzie. Are plants like these, will they have an impact on the airshed?
I think any plant ever
that's ever will it be worse?
Yeah, I think that we need to be careful when we're planning projects like this, and of course there will be an environmental assessment just like any other project. So I think that's where we will look at what impacts there will be to the airshed, to the watershed, to the environment surrounding the people that are surrounding it. I think that through that environmental assessment, we can put our trust in that system to really pick out what negative consequences will come from it. And I have talked to the company a lot, and they are very cognizant of the environmental impacts and are doing a lot of consultation to figure out what they need to do to make sure that it has the least amount of footprint in our area. So I think it's great that they're talking about being a carbon neutral plant. I think that nothing really right now can be completely 100% carbon neutral, but it's nice to be able to get as close as it to 100 that we can.
Absolutely. And Todd, you mentioned a little bit about the tax piece there. That's certainly good news for the city. I'm not sure what the tax bill is on that piece of property when they have something on there, but I'm sure it will be in the six figures or seven figures, I guess. But their other plant is being, or their other facility is being located just outside the city by the airport. I guess. Would you like to see that inside the city, or maybe the city can expand?
Well, yeah. Yeah, let's use the dirty word of annexation. I guess there's always room for annexation anywhere you go. I think when you look at our community, and where I say Prince George is sort of poised for growth and could become one of the largest city centers outside the Lower Mainland, you know, we're not encumbered by mountains and waterways like a lot of the cities in the Okanagan really are. And so our growth is sort of exponential. So there's annexation possibilities all around us as the community continues to grow. And that plot of land that they're currently sitting on it's a great location. I mean, it's quite centralized and easy to access on trucking routes. You've got the airport right there, so they've got some potential access that they can look at down the road. So there's a lot of good pieces to that. But when we talk about the tax base, I think, you know, and everybody sort of agrees, you know, economic diversification is our way forward as a community and as a province. Municipalities really need to kind of key in on those tax-based opportunities, so that it's not just a persistent burden on individual homeowners and businesses.
We've been diversifying forever, though, really, since the early 90s. When I got here in 92, we were a straight up forestry community. And when the 2x4 price dropped, so did anybody going out for anything. But these days, even with the boom and bust cycle in forestry, that parking lot at Costco is always full. You still need reservations if you want to get into a popular restaurant. I think we have diversified our economy significantly. Our largest employer here now, by my understanding, is Northern Health. Yeah. What I'm excited to see is an opportunity to take all of those skills we've developed as a resource community and apply them to this new product or new feedstock, however you want to put it. To use hemp is very forward thinking, and I think it's good for the land base.
when Don Zarowski ran for mayor, one of his catchphrases was the 100,000 population. This would certainly do it. So I guess, Tracy, are we ready to be over 100,000? And granted, if these projects go ahead, it's not like we're going to, I need 15,000 people in 6 months. These are all over a period of time. But do you think the city is ready to expand that much?
I think the city's been operating as the Northern Service Center with a trading area of over 300,000 for the last 30 years. So when you talk about extending the population within city limits, I certainly think we have the resources for it. When people talk about rush hour in Prince George, as a girl who grew up in Toronto, it kind of makes me chuckle. We've got the room, we have the services and the amenities, and I think we've got the manpower. Quite frankly, I think we're well over 100,000 now. Once you get just a little bit beyond city limits, we all may live just outside of city limits, but we're working and living in Prince George for all intents and purposes already.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an interesting piece though too on that, and as a guy who grew up in Toronto, I would agree with you. I thought it was quite laughable when people used to say, "Oh, the traffic's a killer." You don't know a killer till you sit on a 16-lane highway at all hours of the day. But when we talk about the density in Prince George, council talks a lot about the lane kilometers that they have to cover, and that's a challenge with how you approve these projects as they continue to expand our residential areas further and further out. You're adding additional lane kilometers for snow clearing and upkeep and sidewalks and all of these pieces. And you look at some of the cities that have grown strategically and also revitalize their downtown areas. That's infill housing, that's re-envisioning high density housing and low barrier. And when I say low barrier, I mean a 22-year-old can access a condominium for $210,000 a year $210,000 flat in downtown Calgary in certain areas. And so you re-diversify a region and you expand your tax base in a fairly structured and feasible way, and it adds a lot of value to the businesses in that community too, and it sends a signal to other businesses that this is a great place to operate.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also need to be. Oh, sorry, Bill. I think we also need to be building upwards. I think that if you look at how to build a sustainable community, we learn a lot about it in school, and there's a lot of cities that are great examples of this. They're looking at infill, like Todd was saying, but also building up, because there's so much urban sprawl and there's so many potential opportunities for us to build up instead of out.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Yeah, I agree completely. I think the densification, particularly in the core, is going to make a difference. Yeah.
And speaking of the core, we'll switch topics here just a little bit. It's been about 6 months since the city struck a committee to look at issues in the downtown core. That committee, I believe, is expected to table a report next month. And Todd, the chamber was very involved with pushing for that committee, or pushing for something to be done downtown. And the COVID-19 issues certainly saw a bit of a resurgence of some of the problems downtown. Without speaking out of turn, I'm not sure if you're still involved with that committee or not, but some of your thoughts on where that's happening, or can you spill the beans and tell us what's going to happen?
Yeah, certainly. So the committee has taken obviously a bit of a break during the COVID-19 issues. There's been some telephone discussions back and forth, and I know it's the mayor's desire to reconvene through a similar format to this in the coming weeks and reopen that dialogue. I can speak to the chamber's perspective, and we just participated on Friday and Saturday in the BC Chamber of Commerce AGM virtually, which includes our policy debate. And we had a policy that we brought forward specifically, and then a policy that we worked alongside Kamloops, Nanaimo, and Penticton on, all around these issues. So the policy we brought forward and was passed unanimously by the delegates really keys back in on harm reduction strategies and the volume of materials that are being distributed, which we don't feel are appropriate. I don't agree with an addict walking into a location and receiving an endless supply of paraphernalia, which they then strew through our downtown and our parks and public spaces. I believe some of the path forward is certainly harm reduction. We've gone down this road, but some of this is addiction recovery and mental health treatment. And we need to parallel these programs. And so there's a strong focus from our point of view on what government needs to look at, the space that they have available that may be unused or underutilized right now, that could be utilized for housing recovery centers here in Prince George, so people aren't forced to go to the Lower Mainland and be away from their families. So there's a lot of moving parts on this, and we now have policy on the books for the BC Chamber to work with at the provincial level, and we look forward to continuing to navigate these issues.
Tracy, what are your thoughts on there? Saw you maybe
I
was a little bit there on some of those.
I made a face. That was my outside face. Yeah,
what needs to be done down there? What can be done? I suppose is.
I think it's multi-pronged. Todd's right. It isn't just about harm reduction, though that is a key piece. And I really struggle when people criticize harm reduction. I mean, these are human beings, and they're our neighbors and our family and our friends. I think warehousing people with mental health issues and with addiction issues is not the right way to go. It's a complicated problem, and it's going to be different for every individual. And I've been really interested to see during the COVID period where they have moved many people from shelters and from living on the street into hotels, and the kinds of response and results they're getting. Having a safe place to live has to be step one when you're looking to change your feelings about the world around you. And generally speaking, when you get involved in addictions, it's because other pieces of your life haven't been working the way they needed to work. And so I am not an expert, and this is one of those issues that I have always struggled with, but I don't feel anger about it. I don't think that it's something that we can ignore or that we should push out of the downtown just because it's inconvenient to look at. I think the fact that it's in our face is forcing us to deal with it. And I like the wraparound solution that they're talking about down on the old NR Motors site there, where they have not just housing, but also medical support and addiction support there. But yeah, it's a big problem, but it's a societal problem, and it's not something that we fix by pointing the finger at the other and saying that they're scary or dangerous or unattractive. We are all in this together, no different than we are here in COVID. And I really think that we can take some of the same messaging and empathy that we have developed for each other during COVID and apply it to a large homeless and addiction population.
And I just want to sort of jump back in there. We're not saying that harm reduction has to stop. In fact, we're saying this is a multi-pronged approach, as Tracy notes. We've just allocated so much time, money, and resources to harm reduction strategies to stop the spread of communicable diseases amongst that population, with the end result being an out of control addiction crisis and not enough recovery and mental health services being put in place. So really what we're trying to say here is it's fine to provide those materials and paraphernalia to people so that you stop HIV and hepatitis from spreading amongst that population. But there has to be an equal or greater dollar value that's assigned to addictions recovery and mental health treatment.
But it's the language there, Todd, the idea that, like, even your statement about the harm reduction paraphernalia has created an out of control addiction problem. It's not the harm reduction that's created an out of control addiction problem. It's all sorts of inequities in society from top to bottom that have created these out of control addiction problems. And we can't just look at the medical issue in isolation. We have to look at things like the ability to pay your bills and have a safe place to live. I know Mackenzie's talked lots about the idea of a universal income for everyone. There's other pieces to this puzzle. It isn't just about the fact that I have to go and pick up needles in Clayton Memorial Park. There's other issues around this, and I struggle with the language that makes people with these challenges an other. They aren't an other. We're not just stopping the spread of HIV amongst the homeless population. It doesn't stay in the homeless population. It spreads beyond that through family and friends who aren't living on the streets. And I really think empathy and compassion have to be where we start.
Yeah. Mackenzie, you had an office down on 3rd Avenue when you're running for office, so you're probably very aware of some of the issues down there. And like Tracy saying, you're talking about basic income. What are your thoughts, or if you could expand on some of the things that you've been talking about?
Sure. Yeah, this is a big topic. I appreciate Tracy's response. I do think that we need to be looking at this with compassion, and that's something that I talked a lot about during the campaign and that I will keep talking about. It's the idea around this is that they're an other and that we speak about them like they're lesser than a human, and it's not like that at all. We need to be talking about multi-pronged approaches to helping solve this issue. We need to be walking down on the streets like Councillor Scott, and I forget who the other councillor was, that they were down there the other day checking things out. And I think that we just need to kind of put ourselves in their shoes, because a lot of the time it's not that they're just, addicted and that tomorrow they could decide that they want to quit and do it. It's not like that. They can't just do this overnight. They have no homes, a lot of them. It's systematic, and a lot of the time the folks that are down there are Indigenous, and this is systematic racism. And I think that we need to really look at this with a broader view, look at this with empathy and compassion. There's some good things that are happening down there. I saw Councillor Ramsey has been talking about, and successfully, I believe, got hand washing in bathrooms downtown, so that people that are living downtown have somewhere to safely wash their hands and stay safe during this time. I've seen down on Upland Street, there's been a whole bunch of local citizens going and helping revive the community garden. So there's a ton of them right now working on that project, Bill. So I think that you should definitely run a story on that if you haven't already, and bringing independence back into these people's lives, because I really think that once you involve the people in a project like this, they have a sense of ownership, and then they'll take care of it. A lot of the time people will say, oh, well, why should we put anything nice downtown? They're going to ruin it anyways. And that's the problem with the way that we're speaking about these people right now. So I did have an office downtown. I had members that spent a lot of time in that office. I would pop in and out ever so often, but I didn't sit in there a lot because I was very busy running around to Williams Lake and Vanderhoof. But what we did was we offered food to people that came in, and we were empathetic to them. And we had an amazing member that actually has a son that lives on the street, and so we had people that were versed in the best ways to deal with these people. We donated extra food to St. Vincent de Paul right around the corner. We made sure that we were taking safety precautions to make sure that we were locking the doors if there was only one person in the office, and just making sure that people were safe, especially when we had just like one woman in the office, things like that. But I think that we need to look at this in a completely different way. It's great to see that they have projects coming down on 1st Avenue with multiple things coming in that building with mental health services, addiction services. But I don't think the problem is just having a safe injection site, and that's causing this bigger problem. That's one of the solutions to fix this problem, but that's not the only solution. We need to talk about housing as a human right, and a universal basic income, and safe injection sites, the opioid crisis. Like, this is so multi-layered, it's not even funny. It's like there's not one silver bullet. It's going to have to be we were speaking about guns, but I'm not sure what the bullet's called where it sprays after when you shoot it, but it's one of those.
I think that's a dum-dum. No, it's a dum-dum bullet. Sorry.
No, I assumed.
I was thinking birdshot.
But anyways, throw this open to anyone. One of the things we talk about when we talk about a lot of the solutions down there is that these things take time. So what do we do, or how can we, or what do we tell businesses down there who are dealing with this every day right now? Even the facility down there for NR Motors, and I think it's going to be a wonderful facility, but we're looking 3 years out for that at least. So what do we do for local businesses that are struggling down there now, especially with COVID, and this issue's on top of it? What do we do for them? Any suggestions, or anybody want to comment on that?
I would say increasing cleanup I don't think that it should be the responsibility of the individual business owners to try and deal with the cleanup that it has to happen, and that needs to be done more than once a day in some cases as we're working our way through this complicated program. But I do think that having more people down there will make a difference, and that conversation we were having earlier around the densification of people living in the downtown will make a difference as well. I mean, you can, again, I'll go back to my youth in Toronto, and there were lots and lots of people living on the street, and really no one ever talked about it, but they were so mixed in with all the people that lived down there and the businesses that were down there, it became just part of life. And it right at the moment, especially with COVID, there's no one down there except the people that have nowhere else to go.
So I agree with Tracy largely on a lot of points. Densification is a huge, huge piece in all of this. Ownership and the cleanup. This is one of these pieces where, you know, fundamentally the health authorities have a massive, massive role to play in what happens here. And this has to be a mandate that circles from the Fed to the province to the regional health authorities. And that's the money from Health Canada that goes to the BC Health Ministry that then gets siphoned out to your regional health authorities. There's got to be a concerted effort to take ownership for that, whether that's directly as Northern Health, the entity, or whether that's through the agencies that they're empowering to deliver services on their behalf. People need to have an accountability matrix that's put around this, because to Tracy's point, it's not right for the businesses to go out and clean that up. So if we hearken back to harm reduction and not wanting to spread disease, why then does a business owner have to risk their own health by touching a used syringe or human feces or things of that nature? And, you know, so we're all talking about the same thing and we're all using different language, and I can appreciate where Tracy's coming from, that, you know, maybe my choice of words doesn't fit her niche and Mackenzie's doesn't fit mine. I mean, we've all got different stances on this, but largely we all agree that, you know, there is a myriad of approaches that need to be taken here, and there's a lot of accountability that needs to come down. But the end result is the businesses that are trying to enhance our community, who are paying taxes twice, are getting hit with this in a major, major way. So there is a conversation that has to happen at the health authority level. There's a conversation that has to happen at the Crown level as well on what charging processes look like. And, you know, the comment has been made to us over and over again that you go into downtown Prince George in certain areas and it looks like drugs are legal. And during some of the closures, boy, was that ever a challenging thing to see, because I certainly drove through our downtown many different times, many different days. And they've done a great job of kind of bringing that back now that businesses are returning. But we have to get a better grasp on what the criminal code says and how that flows. And is it an opportunity to say addiction recovery and counseling is the way to go, or this is a prolific offender and needs to be addressed as a prolific offender, or this is a harm reduction piece and it needs to remain a harm reduction piece. So there's all these different buckets that need to be looked at. But this is not, you know, and everybody has said this is not an individual fix, and this is not a short-term Band-Aid time.
I'd suggest that part of how we've gotten to this point is the steady downloading of responsibility for providing social services from the federal government to the provincial government to the municipal government, and now it's sitting on the backs of charities. And so if you don't have the process properly funded, you wind up with business owners trying to deal with equipment in their vestibules that they're not trained to be able to handle, and no one has to go to work and clean up someone else's feces. We do it in the park as well. However, I think that if there was a more holistic approach to the funding itself, so that you could have the health units with enough money to be able to supply the people that can do the cleanup who are trained to properly handle it, it would make a difference. But in my view, it's been a steady erosion of the role of a federal government and a provincial government in playing their part. And that predominantly, I think, is in response to elections and to the idea that no one wants to pay taxes and no one wants to have to be the politician who is going to increase the GST or increase property taxes. And so you have elected officials spending their time trying to cut in order to get reelected. And the impacts are what we are seeing on the streets, and not just in this issue, but in many issues where they are unfunded social needs that require the support of all of us as a society to make sure that it's being properly paid for and properly cared for.
Yeah.
I struggle with more taxation as the answer, though.
Yeah.
So where's the money come from then, Todd? Seriously.
Well, I don't disagree with you that there's a massive downloading, and the problem is not a one level of government issue. But I keep going back to this because I think it was the most brilliant statement. It was by Andrew Coyne following the last federal election on the CBC broadcast, and he said, "What needs to be the focus right now is the out of control government spending and bloated bureaucracies at all levels of government." So it's just been this, let's add this service, let's add this program, let's add this, let's tax higher, let's make sure MPs, MLAs, ministers, salary, like everything is just continuing to go up and up and up. But at no point, if anyone's election platform was, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to raise MP salaries by $50,000 a year. It's 4 years, you get a full ride pension after that. You know, like if this was actually public information and we're going to, add 100,000 people to the bureaucracy, they would never get elected. And I think you're making that point quite well, Tracy, that, if you're 100% honest about what your real platform is, boy, no one's ever getting elected. But governments at all level have a much better job at reining in their own spending and allocating it to the areas that are most fundamentally needed. But the people who do the electing are the people.
Yeah, we'll go to Mackenzie to add on that. We just kind of letting the discussion go a little off topic there, but
Sure. I enjoy just like listening, because I'm also at that stage in my life where I'm forming my own opinions and listening to people's ideas, and so I see a benefit in just sitting here and watching. I have all of you on one screen, so I can see it bouncing back and forth. But no, I appreciate what you guys are saying. I do think that there's a lot of government spending, and I do think that there's also what Tracy's saying, and a benefit to increasing some taxes, especially when we have some very high up people making a lot of money. I think that, and not just in politics, in like CEOs as well, and oil and gas, especially, obviously, the Todd's face. I don't think anyone else can see the other person's face when one person is talking, because the way that you have it set up when you post it is that only the person that is talking you can see. So it's really funny. But I think
all for.
Yeah, there's a lot of subsidies in the oil and gas industry, billions and billions of dollars every year. And I think that if we divest from fossil fuels, we'll have a lot of extra cash that we can be using for things like this. So I think that there's a lot of other places that we need to be looking, and not just increasing taxes, but also, looking at other places where we're pouring out billions and billions of dollars every year to things that we need to be moving away from anyways.
Super.
And I know that we're about done, Bill, right? I just have one last thing I want to say, if that's okay. And it's not quite related to these, it's a little bit related, but so I want to talk a little bit about Christian Cooper and George Floyd. And I'm not sure if you know who that is, but it's two black men in America yesterday. One of them was killed. George Floyd was killed, and he was stepped on by a police officer. And Christian Cooper was in a park bird watching. And Amy Cooper, they happen to have the same last name, a white woman, called the cops on him and told them that he was threatening her life. When he had it on record, he was bird watching, and it was a dog leash only park, and her dog was off leash, and he said, please put your dog on a leash. And she called the cops knowing exactly what would happen to him, and specifically told them that it was a black man harassing her on purpose. So I think that we need to be talking about this, because especially in my position, when I have a voice and a platform to talk about these things, just sharing it on my story on social media when it's going to go away in 24 hours isn't good enough. So I will be mentioning this whenever I have an opportunity like this where lots of people can hear about it, because I think that it's not talked about enough. And right now it's blowing up because people heard about the story yesterday, but there's so many cases that aren't talked about. So I just wanted to have this opportunity to use this platform to mention that. So thanks, Bill.
We can talk about that a little bit more next time, but my Zoom is telling me we're done. So thanks everyone. And we will try this again, and we will try to live stream next time. So.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.